When you think of superstars in sports, you instantly think of guys like Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes in the NFL, LeBron James and Steph Curry in the NBA, Mike Trout and Aaron Judge in the MLB. These are athletes that have massive popularity and not only known in their field, but outside of their bubble. These guys can demand high salaries and are worth billions of dollars. Those guys are actual superstars, the superstars of today in the sports world. It's not just stick and ball sports that have superstars, but there's this growing motorsports in America called F1, and they have a star named Lewis Hamilton. You walk down the street and ask 50 people who Lewis Hamilton is, and I guarantee you'll have most of them know who he is. He's been the biggest name in F1 for over a decade now. Now go down the street and ask 50 people who Chase Elliott is, and you'll be lucky to get 2 people to know who the guy is. Yes, this Chase Elliott, NASCAR's most popular driver currently. Some people actually think Chase Elliott is a superstar along with some other drivers in the sport today. I ran a poll on my channel and got a decent amount of votes and asked the question, does NASCAR have any superstars nowadays? Majority said no, and if you selected that, you're right. NASCAR doesn't have any superstars currently. At one point, yeah, they did, drivers like Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jeff Gordon, but those guys have retired. Who does NASCAR have now? Because it's not Chase Elliott, it's not Kyle Larson, it's not Kyle Busch, it's not Joey Logano, it's not Denny Hamlin, it's not Ross Chastain. These are successful drivers that are very known in NASCAR. But to be considered a superstar, you have to be also known outside that bubble, and none of these guys aren't. You don't see Chase Elliott doing things like being in music videos and hosting Saturday Night Live. These are things that Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jeff Gordon did during their careers. They were everywhere. NASCAR actually did a great job marketing their stars back then. Putting your stars in front of more cameras pays off. Guys like Junior, Gordon, and Tony Stewart brought a positive light to NASCAR. Being successful on the track and actually having a personality instead of being a corporate robot, which is how a lot of these drivers nowadays come off, at least in their interviews. The top stars in NASCAR today doesn't really bring a positive light to the sport. Chase Elliott gets criticized for having no personality, Kyle Larson said a racial slur a few years ago, and Bubba Wallace had the whole noose incident that turned a lot of people away from him. Bubba Wallace is probably the most known outside the NASCAR bubble, but for the wrong reasons. That doesn't make him a superstar though. We all know how accomplished Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch are, but they're not superstars as well. And these are 2 guys that came around during the golden era of NASCAR when NASCAR was huge. I guess you could say that they were on the cusp of being superstars, but never got to that status. Kyle Busch was recently one of the biggest free agents we've seen in years when it was confirmed that he wasn't returning to Joe Gibbs Racing, an organization that he raced for since 2008 and made him a big name in NASCAR. When he became a free agent, it was a huge deal in the NASCAR community, but outside of NASCAR, nobody cared. Compare that to when Dale Earnhardt Jr. was a free agent, it's a night and day difference. When Jr. was a free agent, it had everyone talking. All of the popular media outlets was talking about it, and when he had the press conference on deciding who he was going to race for, it was covered everywhere. I actually remember watching it live, and it was insane how many media outlets covered the announcement. I can't call Kyle Busch a superstar when nobody outside the NASCAR bubble cared about where he was going to race in the future. Not to mention Kyle Busch, who has 2 championships and 60+ career wins, had to settle for a pay cut. And I understand NASCAR is different from other sports because it's very sponsorship driven, but it's still a big deal because even after Mars left, it wasn't big sponsors clamoring to sponsor Kyle Busch, who was one of the top drivers in NASCAR. That's a problem. Ross Chastain went viral in 2022 after the Hail Melon, 10 million views across all social media sites. Did it make him more popular in NASCAR land? Yeah. Did it make him a superstar? No. Even though he went viral, it was something that caught the public eye for about 48 hours and then people moved on. NASCAR didn't have a spike in viewership after the Hail Melon. Ross Chastain's name isn't even known after something like that. I think it's multiple reasons why NASCAR doesn't have true superstars. You can honestly blame both NASCAR and the drivers themselves. But before I even dive into that, we gotta look at the reality. And the reality is that NASCAR is a niche sport nowadays. It's not big time how it was a little over a decade ago. It's a combination of factors as to why it's not thriving anymore, but one of the reasons is lack of stars. I'll start with NASCAR. They don't promote these guys as much as they need to. You don't see these guys going on big popular media outlets to promote NASCAR. Barely. And when they do, they only do it for races like the Daytona 500 or if they're going to a new market. This needs to be something that happens for every race all year. I'll give NASCAR a little credit. They tried to have their own version of Drive to Survive, and it was good, but the problem is that nobody saw it. It's coming on USA at like what, 10 o'clock at night? It would have been a smarter decision to put this on a popular streaming service like Netflix or hell, even Peacock. I think that show probably would have taken off had it been on a popular streaming service. You don't see NASCAR drivers in many commercials nowadays. As a matter of fact, you don't see many NASCAR commercials. When you watch a NASCAR race just 10 years ago, you saw nothing but commercials that featured the drivers. And a lot of the commercials were great. They were funny and sometimes made the drivers and the sport itself look even more cool. Get these drivers in more commercials, and not only that, but have commercials air on other networks. Have them be placed on streaming services before or during a show. If someone's watching something on Hulu or YouTube and is getting ready to run into an advertisement, have those commercials be featured on those platforms so you can actually have these drivers everywhere and not just on Fox and NBC, which is the current networks that broadcast NASCAR. Don't be afraid to do this. You'll get a return on investment in the long run because promoting your drivers will help grow the sport. After that Hail Melon, if I was NASCAR, I would have had Ross Chastain on a media run leading up to Phoenix. I would have did everything I could to get him in front of many popular media outlets as possible during that week. Then I would have continued that during the off season. That was NASCAR's big moment and they blew it. The championship race didn't have a huge spike in viewership, and so far as I'm recording this video in the middle of the season, ratings have been down. It seemed like NASCAR is somewhat acknowledging that they need to promote their star drivers because look how they promoted Chase Elliott after he returned from being injured. They promoted the hell out of that. Yes, he's NASCAR's most popular driver, so people are saying, well duh, they had to advertise his comeback. Yeah, but has NASCAR ever advertised Chase Elliott or any other driver like this since Dale Earnhardt Jr.? No. And hey, I'm not mad about this. Do this more often. And not just with Chase Elliott, but your other top drivers as well. It's not just NASCAR's fault why these drivers aren't actual superstars, but it's the drivers themselves. 90% of the Cup drivers shelve themselves into a race weekend. You don't hear from them throughout the week. These drivers aren't active on social media, and it's usually their PR person tweeting for them most of the time. I know social media can be toxic, but there's people on there that aren't like that. Just ignore those people and actually talk to the fans. It would be cool if these drivers can show us how their week is going leading up to a race, whether that's through Instagram or YouTube or whatever social media app. There's actually some drivers that got YouTube channels like Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, and Kyle Busch, top tier drivers. But these drivers don't make it feel like it's their channel. What do I mean by this? Well, go watch Chase Elliott or Kyle Larson channel and then go watch Hailie Deegan or Parker Kligerman's channel. There's a big difference. Hailie and Parker are actually talking to us. They're looking into the camera and telling us what it's like being a race car driver and what they go through and etc. You don't get that from Chase, Larson, and even Kyle Busch. And listen, I'm not saying that doing this stuff will automatically make them a superstar, but it wouldn't hurt to try this stuff. Social media is so important nowadays to grow your brand. Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jeff Gordon didn't have this back in the day. Guys like Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson do. And speaking of those two drivers, it's something those two share along with most of their peers, and that's lack of personality. I mean, it definitely doesn't help your image. It feels like these drivers aren't really themselves when they got a camera in front of them. When they get interviewed, they get into corporate mode, and yeah, I get it. You got sponsors and you want to come off professional, but man, you don't have to come off dry. When I watch INDYCAR drivers and even F1 drivers get interviewed, they come off as more loose. They're cracking jokes, they're not monotone, they're not corporate robots, which is how 75% of the Cup drivers come off nowadays. Even when these guys win races, they just sound like it's not a big deal. This is actually a pet peeve of mine. So I actually made a video about this a couple of years ago. If you win at Cup races and come off nonchalant, then it tells the fans that maybe this isn't that big of a deal. I want to see excitement from drivers when they win. I don't care if you win a lot. Celebrate that shit. This is how you gain popularity. Fans are going to look forward to you winning going forward if you're a driver that actually show emotion after a win. A lot of these guys don't. These drivers just don't help themselves. If you want to grow the sport and grow your own brand, you just can't shove yourself until Sunday. I get that these guys just want to race, which is cool, but this is a business at the end of the day. That's what the current drivers and upcoming drivers need to learn. Do things that will help grow the sport. You gotta put yourself out there, but you also gotta be talented behind the wheel. We see guys that are fun to watch on track every week like Kyle Larson and Ross Chastain, but your driving ability isn't just gonna lead you into superstardom. It's the driver's responsibility, but it's also on NASCAR as well. It's gonna take effort from both sides. I mean, it would help too if NASCAR could quit making stupid decisions like lowering horsepower and adding gimmicks and just give the fans what they truly want. It would also be nice if NASCAR had a developer that can make great console NASCAR games. Like I said, it's gonna take a combination of things to get these drivers really known outside the NASCAR bubble. Until then, these drivers aren't gonna be truly known. Superstars to some of you, the hardcore NASCAR fan, yeah. Superstars like a Tom Brady or a LeBron James, no. None of these drivers currently are at that status yet. So, to wrap this up, no, NASCAR doesn't have any superstars, but they can definitely create some with effort from NASCAR and the drivers themselves. So, you heard from me, now what's y'all opinion on this topic? Do you guys think NASCAR has superstars? Let me know in the comments. I'm gonna go ahead and roll up out of here. Y'all have a good one. Peace.